तो आज के जो श्रीमद् भागवत पाठ है, तो आज के श्रीमद् भागवत पाठ में सबको बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। तो हम लोग कंटिन्यूअसली पाठ कर रहे, तो बीच में कुछ दिन ब्रेक हुआ हम लोगों का यात्रा के कारण। तो आज से हम लोग फिर से स्टार्ट करेंगे। हम लोग कंटिन्यूअसली श्रीमद् भागवतम पाठ कर रहे थे। फोर्थ कैंटो 8 चैप्टर, ध्रुव महाराज लिव्स होम फॉर द फॉरेस्ट, राइट। तो लोग श्लोक नंबर 4 तक पढ़े थे। आज हम लोग श्लोक 5 से स्टार्ट करेंगे। तो पहले हम लोग मंगलाचरण करेंगे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्ति भगवती नष्टिकी। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातामहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। ॐ तत्सत्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिचारु स्वामी नामिने स्निग्धचेतसुप्रणीत वाग्मीनां चरसाप्ततं प्रभुपादगत प्राणो नौमि भक्तिचारु पदम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। हरे कृष्णा। फोर्थ कैंटो 8 चैप्टर, श्लोक नंबर 5। संग्रहेण मया ख्याता रतिसार्गस्तवनगा त्रिश्रुतवत्तत् पुमान् पुण्यं विधुनति आत्मनोमलम्। Translation: My dear Vidura, I have summarily explained the cause of devastation. One who hears this description 3 times attains piety and washes the sinful contamination from his soul. Purport: the creation takes place on the basis of goodness, but devastation takes place because of irreligion. That is the way of material creation and devastation. Here it is stated that the cause of devastation is adharma or irreligion. The descendants of irreligion and falsity, born one after another, and are bluffing, cheating, greed, cunning, anger, envy, quarrel, harsh speech, death, fear, severe pain, and hell. All these descendants are described as sign of devastation. If a person is pious and hears about these causes of devastation, he will feel hatred for all this, and that will cause his advancement in a life of piety. Piety refers to the process of cleansing the heart, as recommended by the Lord Chaitanya. One has to cleanse the dust from the mirror of the mind, and then advancement on the path of liberation begins. Here also the same process is recommended. Malam means contamination. We should learn to despise all the causes of devastation, beginning from irreligion and cheating. And then we shall be able to make advancement in a life of piety. The possibility of our attaining Krishna consciousness will be easier, and we shall not be subjected to repeated devastation. The present life is repeated birth and death, but if we seek the path of liberation, we may be saved from repeated suffering. 4.8.6 अतता कीर्त एवं सम पुण्य कीर्ते कुरुद्वः स्वयंभू व्यसपि मानोर हरेर अंशं सा जन्मना. Translation: Maitreya continued, O best of the Kuru dynasty, I shall now describe to you the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu, who was born of a part of a planetary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport: that Brahma is a powerful expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Brahma is Jiva Tattva, he is empowered by the Lord, and therefore he is considered a plenary expansion of the Supreme Godhead. Sometimes it happens that when there is no suitable living being to be empowered to act as Brahma, the Supreme Lord himself appears as Brahma. Brahma is the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Swayambhu Manu was the direct son of Brahma. The great sage Maitreya is now going to explain about the descendants of his Manu. This Manu, all of whom are widely celebrated for their pious activities. Before speaking of these pious descendants, Maitreya has already described the descendants of impious activities, representing anger, envy, unpalatable speech, quarrel, fear, and death. Purposely, therefore, he is next relating the history of the life of Dhruva Maharaj, the most pious king within this
Hare
India.
Krishna Prabhu, your voice is not clear.
Now, it is clear?
Can you speak a bit louder, Prabhuji?
Speech. Okay. Death. 4.8.7 प्रियव्रतो न पदौ प्रियव्रततुतान् प्रियव्रत उत्तानपादौ शतरूपापते सुतौ वासुदेवस्य कलाया रक्षं जगतस्थितौ. Translation: Swayambhu Manu had two sons by his wife Saturupa, and the names of the sons were Uttanpad and Priyavrata because both of them were descendants of a plenary expansion of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They were very competent to rule the universe, to maintain and protect the citizens. But it is said that these two kings, Uttanpada and Priyabrata, were specifically empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unlike the great king Rishabh, who was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Jaye Uttanpadasya Suniti Suruchistaya Suruchi Preyasi Pratyur Netarana Yat Sutta Dhruva. Translation: King Uttanpad had two queens named Suniti and Suruchi. Suruchi was much more dear to King Suniti, who had a son named Dhruva, was not his favorite. But the great sage Maitreya wanted to describe the pious activities of the kings. Priyabhata was the first son of Swayambhu Manu and Uttanpad was the second. But the great sage Maitreya immediately began to speak of Dhruva Maharaj, the son of Uttanpad, because Maitreya was very eager to describe pious activities. The incidents in the life of Dhruva Maharaj are very attractive for devotees. From his pious actions, one can learn how one can detach himself from material possessions and how one can enhance one's devotional service by severe austerities and penances. By hearing the activities of pious Dhruva, one can enhance one's faith in God and can directly connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus one can very soon be elevated to the transcendental platform of devotional service. The example of Dhruva Maharaj's austerities can immediately generate a feeling of devotional service in the hearts of the hearers. Slok 9. Ekada suruchi putram ankam aropya lalayan uttamam naruruksantam uttamam narurukshanatam santam dhruvam raja vayanandata. Translation: Once upon a time, King Uttanpad was patting the son of Suruchi Uttama, placing him on his lap. Dhruva Maharaj was also trying to get on the king's lap, but the king did not very much welcome him. Slok 10. Tathachi Tathachi kir samanam tam sapatayanas tanayam dhruvam Suruchi sranvato rajna Srishyam ahati garvita. Translation: While the child Dhruva Maharaj was trying to get on that lap of his father, Suruchi, his stepmother, became very envious of the child, and with great pride she began to speak so as to be heard by the king himself. Purport: the king, of course, was equally affectionate toward both of his sons, Uttam and Dhruva, so he had a natural inclination to take Dhruva as well as Uttama on his lap. But because of his favoritism towards his queen Suruchi, he could not welcome Dhruva Maharaj despite his feelings. King Uttanapa's feelings was understood by Suruchi, and therefore with great pride she began to speak about the king's affection for her. This is the nature of woman. If a woman understands that her husband regards her as a favorite and is especially affectionate to her, she takes undue advantage. These symptoms are visible even in such an elevated society as the family of Swayambhu Manu. Therefore, it is concluded that the feminine nature of woman is present everywhere. Slok 11. Navasa pratirधिष्ण्याम bhavan आरोधुम arhati न गृहीतो माया यत्वम कुक्षभ अपि Nipat Maja. Translation: Queen Suruchi told Dhruva Maharaj, "My dear child, you do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. Surely you are also the son of the king, but because you did not take your birth from my womb, you are not qualified to sit on your father's lap." Purport: Queen Suruchi very proudly informed Dhruva Maharaj that to be the king's son was not the qualification for sitting on the lap or throne of the king. Rather, this privilege was dependent on one's having taken birth from her womb. In other words, she indirectly informed Dhruva Maharaj that although he happened to be born of the king, he was considered an illegitimate son because of his birth from the womb of the other queen. Slok 12. वालुशिवातनत्मानम् अन्यस्त्रीगर्भसंभृतं नूनं वेद भवन यस्या दुर्लभेरिते मनोरथा. Translation: My dear child, you are unaware that you were born not of my womb, but of another woman. Therefore, you should know that your attempt is doomed to failure. You are trying to fulfill a desire which is impossible to fulfill. Purport: the small child Dhruva Maharaj was naturally affectionate toward his father, and he did not know that there was a distinction between his two mothers. This distinction was pointed out by Queen Suruchi, who informed him that since he was a child, he did not understand the distinction between the two queens. This is another statement of Queen Suruchi's pride. तापश्रद्धा पुरुषं तस्यैवनुग्रहेण मे गर्भे त्वं साध्यत्मानं यदिच्छसि निपासनम्. Translation: If you at all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you have to undergo severe austerities. First of all you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, and then when you are favored by him because of such worship, you shall have to take your next birth from my womb. Purport: Suruchi was so envious of Dhruva Maharaj that she indirectly asked him to change his body according to her. First of all, he had to die, then take his next body in her womb, and only then it would be possible for Dhruva Maharaj to ascend the throne of his father. Text 14. Maitra Uvacho Matu Sapta Matu Sapatnya Sadrukuti Vidya Swasan Rusa Dandahato Yathahi Hitva Mishantam Pitram Sannavacham Jagamamatu Prarudan Saksham. Translation: the sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, as a snake, when struck by a stick, breath very heavily. Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by the strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of his great anger. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, he immediately left the palace and went to his mother. Tamni swasnatam swapuritat adharostham sunitir utsanga uduya valam nisammatat paura mukhan nitantam savivatya yad gaditam sapatne. Translation: When Dhruva Maharaj reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger and he was crying very grievously when Suniti immediately lifted her son onto her lap, while the palace residents who had heard all the harassed words of Suruchi related everything in detail. The Suniti also became greatly aggravated. Slok 16. Sotsajya dhairyam vilapya shoka Davagnina dava late bala Vakyam sapatnya smarati saroja Srijadrisha baspakalam uvaha. Translation: This incident was unbearable to Suniti's patience. She began to burn as if in a forest fire, and in her grief, she became just like a burnt leaf and so lamented. As she remembered the words of her co-wife, her bright, lotus-like face filled with tears, and thus she spoke. But when a man is aggrieved, he feels exactly like a burnt leaf in a forest fire. Smriti's position was like that. Although her face was as beautiful as a lotus flower, it dripped up because of the burning fire caused by the harsh words of her co-wife. Slok 17. दीर्घं स्व दीर्घं स्वसन्ति वृजनस्य पारम् अपय अपश्यति बालकम् अहावाला मामङ्गलं तथा परेषु ममस्था भुङ्क्ते जानो यत्परा दुःखदस्तात्. Translation: She also was breathing very heavily and she did not know the factual remedy for the painful situation. Not finding any remedy, she said to her son, My dear son, don't wish for anything inauspicious for others. Anyone who inflicts pains upon others suffers himself from that pain. Satyam suruchi vivitam bhavan me yadhruvagya udare grihita स्तन्येन वृद्धश्च विलजत्ययम् भर्यतीव वधूम् idaspatirmam. Translation: Suniti said, My dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi is so because the king, your father, does not consider me his wife or even his maid servant. He feels ashamed to accept me. Therefore, it is a fact that you have taken birth from the womb of an unfortunate woman, and by being fed from her breast, you have grown a. Look, 19. अतिस्ततत् तथाभिमत् सरस्त्वम् उक्तं स्मरत् समत्रपि यद् अव्यलिकम् आराधयत् आराधयधोक्षज पादपादमम् यदिच्छसे ध्यासनम् उत्तमो यथा. Translation: My dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi, your stepmother, although very harsh to hear, is factual. Therefore, if you desire at all to sit on the same throne as your stepbrother Uttama, then give up your envious attitude and immediately try to execute the instructions of your stepmother. Without further delay, You must engage yourself in worshipping the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The harsh words used by Suruchi to a stepson were true because unless one is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve any success in life. Man proposes, God disposes. Suniti, the mother of Dhruva Maharaj, agreed with her co-wife's advice that Dhruva engage himself in the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Indirectly, the words of Suruchi were a benediction of Dhruva Maharaj. For because of the influence of his mother's words, he became a great devotee. Slok 20. Yes, Yanghri Padmam Paricharya Viswa Vibhavanatya Gunabhi Pate Ajo Ajodhyatistat Khalu Paramesthyam Padam Jitatma Swasana Bhivandayam. Translation. Suniti continued. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is so great that simply by worshipping his lotus feet, your great grandfather, Lord Brahma, acquired the necessary qualifications to create this universe. Although he is unborn and is the chief of all living creatures, he is situated in that exalted post because of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whom even great yogis worship by controlling the mind and regulating the life of air prana. Purport. Suniti cited the example of Lord Brahma, who was Dhruva Maharaj's great grandfather. Although Lord Brahma is also a living being, by his penance and austerity, he acquired the exalted position of creator of his of this universe by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. To become successful in any attempt, one not only has to undergo severe penances and austerities, but also must be dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This indication had been given to Dhruva Maharaj by his stepmother and was now confirmed by the own mother Suniti. Slok 21. तथा मनुर्वो भगवान पितामहो यम एका मात्या पुरुदक्षिणैर्मखै इष्टा इष्टभापीपदे दुर्भपम अनत्यो अन्यतो भौमम भौमम सुखम दिव्यम अथा पवर्गम. Translation. Suniti informed her son, your grandfather Swayambhu Manu executed great sacrifices with distribution of charity, and thereby with unflinching faith and devotion he worshipped and satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By acting in that way, he achieved the greatest success in material happiness and afterwards achieved liberation, which is impossible to obtain by worshipping the demigods. Purport. The success of one's life is measured by one's material happiness in this life and liberation in the next. Such success can be achieved only by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words Eka Matya mean concentrating one's mind on the Lord without deviation. This process of undeviating worship of the Supreme Lord is also expressed in Bhagavad Gita and as Ananya Bhak, that which is impossible to obtain from any other source, is also mentioned here. Other source refers to worship of the demigods. It is especially stressed here that the opulence of Manu was due to his undeviating faithfulness in the transcendental service of the Lord. One who diverts his mind to worshipping many demigods to obtain material happiness is considered a gift of intelligence. If anyone wants even material happiness, he can worship the Supreme Lord without deviation, and persons who are desirous of liberation can also worship the Supreme Lord and achieve their goal of life. So today we stop here. From tomorrow we will start from text 22. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। पद पावन शिल गुरु महाराज की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव भक्त वृंद की जय।